A retirement fund is geared towards receiving monies from members, that is receiving money in via payroll deduction system. Whereas a beneficiary fund is for paying money out, especially in the form of monthly incomes, as well as ad hoc payments towards school fees and other similar things. Therefore, the difference you can see clearly is the administration that would be different amongst these two, the communication, the investments, and the service approach that you'd have in these different options. The reasons why we agree that it shouldn't be retained in a retirement fund is because there are so many differences between the administration services required, as well as the communication required for these services, and the investments and asset allocation also play a major role. When you look at the administration of a retirement fund system, it is basically something that can be updated on a monthly basis. When it comes to beneficiary funds, there's such a high volume of transactions and activities that it does require a daily update of administration. There are other instances, for instance, also where you need to look at a benefit statement, for instance, which is part of your administration, that you would find you need to reflect in there what are the income payments that have been paid to that guardian for that period. You need to reflect what ad hoc payments have been made towards other educational and other kinds of needs of the child. And you also need to understand that beneficiaries and guardians actually monitor these benefit statements. For them, it's more like a bank account where you want to see what your balance is, instead of a long-term investments where you don't monitor it that often. The trustees' engagement of a beneficiary fund is quite intense in the sense that there are often capital requests that are coming through that doesn't necessarily fit in with the guidelines prescribed, and therefore we then require their intervention to make decisions in the interest of these beneficiaries. And finally, the infrastructure that you would require really needs to be a good system to be able to deliver all of this and your resources. For instance, at Fairheads, our resource base would be a question of 1 staff member to 400 beneficiaries, because we have that high intensity of administration that needs to be up to standard. If you, for instance, look at communication in the retirement fund, the communication that the retirement fund board would do to the members would normally be via your HR department. There'd sometimes be a website that they can refer to, and they would use the postal system from time to time. In a beneficiary fund where you have a lot of high intensity needs and activities, there's a big need for two-way communication with your beneficiaries and guardians. Bearing in mind there are often language and literacy issues that have to be considered to make sure the communication is up to standard for them. And lastly, at Fairheads, we have established a state-of-the-art contact center to help with our communications. We also have walk-in centers at all our satellite offices where beneficiaries and guardians can walk into for face-to-face communication and services. We've even moved further, and a few years ago established road shows by which we go out to various areas to be able to give face-to-face communication opportunities for our beneficiaries and guardians. Going even further, we have used SMSing extensively, in the sense that we can notify them what payments have been made to them, and we can also remind them at the same time to update the information with us so that we have up-to-date current information. Even beyond that, we have also established a relationship with TEBA Limited, where, for instance, guardians and beneficiaries can walk into any TEBA branch, and any outstanding information that we need can be uploaded by TEBA Limited for them and sent to us to ensure we can interact with them further. Beyond that, we've also moved on to voice biometrics, which is a good achievement for us in terms of being able to identify beneficiaries and guardians firstly, and then secondly be able to transact with them telephonically. Now you tell me what retirement fund would put all that communication in place for beneficiaries and guardians. The third reason we'd like to look at is the difference between the investments and asset allocation between a retirement fund and a beneficiary fund. In a retirement fund, for instance, there's a big focus towards preservation and growth to ensure that when you retire, you have a sufficient balance to retire on. And therefore, in that instance, the retirement fund would focus a lot more on maximizing returns, and there would be a very low need for liquidity for them. So that wouldn't be a focus to them at all. In a beneficiary fund, when you look at the asset allocation and investments of this particular aspect, the essence would then be to ensure that there's enough income generated for these children, and therefore you will need sufficient liquidity. Secondly, there are also capital claims that come in from time to time, and that too requires that you have liquidity. But you also need to look at growth opportunities for these monies. So in essence, at the end of the day, you want to be able to sustain the short-term needs of the beneficiaries, but you also want to have a decent yield and return for them. And eventually you want to make sure that it's completely sustainable so that when they turn 18, at least there's something left for them in the fund. In conclusion, the FSB hasn't set any specific requirements in terms of how children's assets should be administered. So if the trustees haven't put specific systems in place for this, they should ask themselves, if I do not have the strategy to administer these children's assets, shouldn't I be considering a beneficiary fund?